Hello, my name is Ray Hughes, and I'm an interviewer for the Veterans History Project conducted by the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and locally administered here at the Cincinnati Hamilton County Public Library, and locally managed by Brian Powers, who's our cameraman today, and Christopher Smith, who is in the office currently. Today's date is the 8th of January, 2020. And we have the honor and privilege today of interviewing a Korean War veteran, Sergeant John Vincent Marshall. And Mr. Marshall, is it okay just to call you John?
Yes, you can call me John, call me Jack.
Okay.
I answer to both of them.
All right, Jack,
Yeah.
Yeah. Jack, if you would, what's your date of birth and where were you born?
Well, I was born March 30th, 1931, and I was born up at the Good Samaritan Hospital in Cincinnati.
And where were you living at the time?
The first I remember was at 1403 Ludlow Place, Cincinnati, Ohio, and that's in Northside.
Uh-huh. And what were your parents' names?
My father, well, I never knew my father. He died when I was 9 months old. So his name was Clarence Marshall, or Philip Marshall. It depends which way you hear. And my mother's name was Natalie Woodruff.
That was her maiden name, Woodruff?
That was her maiden name, yeah. And she lived up until about 30 years ago.
I see.
Yeah.
And did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, I had 2 brothers. Jim, my oldest brother, and Richard, or Dick, he was the middle one, and I was the younger one.
Any sisters?
No sisters, no.
What churches did you folks belong to and attend?
At that time, I went to St. Patrick's Catholic Church in Northside, it's over on Blue Rock,
Mm-hmm.
and basically that was it. Stayed there until I moved out of Northside.
I see.
Yeah.
Did you know any of your grandparents, Jack?
Oh yeah, well I remember my one grandfather and my one grandmother. One grandmother I have absolutely no recollection of. That was in my mother's side. No, that was on my father's side. And his father, I have some very vague recollections. He did live with us, so we lived in Northside.
On the Marshall side, do you remember their name, grandparents?
Yeah, it was, no, I'm thinking of Woodruff. On the Marshall side, no, I really don't. Because I never had any, well, I had no recollection of the grandmother. I don't know whether she died before I was born or shortly afterwards. And the grandfather, he was, I guess you'd say, kind of aloof or off, because he lived in the same house and he had a room upstairs, but you never seen him.
Uh-huh.
So he was kind of like a hermit in the home.
I see.
So, and
That's on the Woodruff side you're talking about?
the what?
Was that on the Woodruff side?
No, that was on the Marshall side.
Oh, okay.
Now, on the Woodruff side, I knew my grandfather, Orville, who played Major League Baseball, by the way. He was with the Cincinnati Reds for 8 years, I believe. And then my grandmother, I guess she died, it would have been September of 1953. Mm-hmm. Right shortly before, or shortly after I got married to my wife.
And so your grandfather Woodruff played for the Reds, huh?
Yeah. He was a utility.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So apparently he was pretty good. He was with them for 8 years. I don't know, he was in the majors for longer than that, but I don't know any previous.
What was his name again?
Orville Woodruff.
Orville, yeah.
Yep.
I guess they played down there on Western Road.
I guess.
Yeah, before Crosley Field.
Yeah, I guess it was before Crosley. I don't know what year did Crosley Field get built, do you know?
No, neither do I.
I don't either. But wherever they played, I'm sure that's where he played, because he was with them for 8 years. Mm. And his other, I don't know what his other commitments were team-wise.
Yeah. What schools did you go to?
I went to grade school, went to St. Patrick's in Northside for the 8 years. Then I went to Roger Bacon High School for 4 years. And then shortly after that, about a month after I graduated, is when the Korean War started. So then about 3 months later, I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
Did you play any sports while you were in high school?
Played football, yeah. As a matter of fact, did pretty well. I got some records that are part of the history of the team.
I see.
Yeah. At that time, it doesn't sound like a lot now. I had 13 touchdowns, which back then was a record that held up at Roger Bacon for about 10 years.
Is that right?
Yeah. And back there, well, we used a T formation, and that was kind of like the early stages of the T formation. There were still high school teams were using the single wing. But most of them were going to the T formation. And what they call these formations now, I have no idea. They're just different or whatever. So, but yeah, I had a record for the longest kickoff return.
You did?
For years, yeah. Up against State and Chaminade. It was the start of the second half. The first half was a scoreless. The second half kickoff, I took it at the 5-yard line and took it back for a touchdown. So it was a 95-yard kickoff return, and that was a record for a long time too. Yeah, it was a whatever. I don't know. It was. I know it was 10 or 15 years before it was tied or broken. I think before it was broken.
You stay in touch with any of those guys you played football with?
Well, no, because basically most of them that I know, I don't know how many of them are still alive. Yeah. I used to see some of them at reunions, but they don't. Our class doesn't have reunions anymore, so I haven't seen any of them for years.
So your mother, of course, didn't have. Did your mother work outside the home anymore?
Yeah, my father died when I was 9 months old, so she went to work, and she worked down at the Central Trust, down at the Union Central building for years, yeah.
That's at 4th and Vine.
Yeah, right. And then after she left, and she worked for, I can't think of the name of it, was a company on Spring Grove Avenue down in, I forget, whatever. And she worked for the company out on Tennessee Avenue for probably the last 20 years of her career.
I see.
Maybe longer. So.
Who took care of you guys while she was working?
My grandmother. Annie Woodruff was my grandmother, yeah. Mm-hmm. She run the house.
She pretty strict?
Oh yeah, she was great. Yeah, I remember her very, very lovingly and familiarly. She just was a beautiful grandmother, that's all you can say. Took care of us, did all the housework, the laundry, prepared most of the meals, so she was kind of like the house, whatever, whatever you would call it.
You, as a child, you don't remember Pearl Harbor, or do you?
Yes, I do, definitely. I remember Sunday afternoon. It was about 5 o'clock, I guess, if I recall. The radio was on. That was before television. And I don't know what I was doing because I was fairly young. I was only in the 5th grade. And all of a sudden the radio come on, said, radio report that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was. I had no idea what the real segment or the consequences were. Right. And then it went on from there for the next 5 years. And then I remember I had a job at a gas station in the 8th grade, and I can remember the day that the Japanese surrendered, because I was working, and all of a sudden started hearing rifle shots going off and all kinds of, celebrating.
People celebrating?
Huh?
People celebrating?
People celebrating, right, yeah.
What gas station did you work at?
It was in Northside on Langland, Hamilton and Langland. I was trying to think of the name of the company. It was It's long gone out of business. But I worked there for about a year.
Langland? Did you say?
Langland, or Yangling, yeah, wait a minute. It was Langland Street and something like it. I'm not exactly sure what it is.
In Hamilton?
It's between Knowlton Street and Chase Street,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
What other jobs did you have as a boy growing up?
Whatever, what?
What other jobs?
Well, when I first got out of the service.
No, before you went into service.
Oh, before I went into service.
As a boy?
Nothing.
Did you have a paper route or anything?
No, I never had a paper route. My brother had a paper route, but I never did. Never was interested in getting a paper route.
Mm-hmm.
Basically that was it.
That's back in the day when you checked the oil when a guy come in, or
Yeah, right.
everybody got their oil checked?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. You did it all. The customer didn't do anything. It ain't like now. It's like everything's self-service now.
Yeah.
Back then, you put the gas in, you check the oil, you wash the windows, whatever it was. And that was your job.
Any other jobs when you were growing up?
Well, I worked at Schmidt's Bakery briefly with a friend who worked there, and he got me the job. So that was only for maybe 6 months. I think, and then it was right before I went into service. I kind of like wanted out of there anyhow. It wasn't. We used to work nights, and you know, when you're high school age, working at a bakery at night is not what you want to do on a Saturday night or a Friday night. So,
Right.
so anyhow, we went into service, and that was it. I come out of the service. I worked for American District Telegraph for about 18 months, and then I got into the fire department, Cincinnati Fire Department.
So you graduated from high school then in June
June 1950.
June of 1950.
Yeah.
And what were your plans? What were you going to do after high school?
I didn't really have any plans, any specific plans. Just
Well, on June the 25th.
well, the thing is, you get out, you didn't have plans because it was only about 3 weeks and the Korean War started.
Right.
At that time, I was working for a decorator, a paper hanger, and I don't know, I might end up being a paper hanger for the war hadn't started.
That's another trade that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, right.
Hanging wallpaper?
Hanging wallpaper, yeah, right. And I never got to the point where I could hang it. I was always the guy who had to paste it and cut it and give it to the guy that was doing the paper hanging.
Right.
A fellow named Gene Dietrich. I remember him from high school, but he died several years ago, pretty suddenly. But then I had that job for just 6 months, I'd say at the most. And
So
that's when,
on June the 25th, when the North Koreans invaded South Korea,
yeah.
were you aware of it?
Well, just what you heard on the news, yeah, yeah. But nobody paid attention to where troops were overseas. The war was over, you know. It's all going to be peace and love and brotherhood. Well, that didn't last very long. So, yeah, that was a.
So what happened after you found out the war? They were.
Do what?
What happened then after you knew they had started a war there? Did you?
Well,
join,
the fellows that I used to bum with, we used to hang at a little bar called Ritter's. We were all underage, but you still could drink back then. They didn't buy, because there maybe one guy in the crowd was a driver. So it wasn't like everybody was driving cars, so they didn't really worry too much about that you were drinking. So how I started hanging in that bar when I was a sophomore in high school. We used to play basketball at St. Pat's on a Sunday afternoon, and then go up to Ritter's for the rest of the day.
Where was that located, Ritter's?
That was right on Chase Street at Apple, Chase and Apple. And I don't know if
Is it still there?
I'm not sure. I haven't been that area for a long time. It was, but it was there for a long time.
Was there a place out there called Wagner's?
Called what?
Wagner's?
Grinders?
Wagner's.
Wagner's.
Yeah.
Yeah, but where the hell was it? I'm not sure. That was over on, I really don't know. I can't remember where it was. But I do remember the name.
So, when did you decide to join the service, or were you drafted?
No, I enlisted. It was about 3 months after the war started. There was one of all his close friends, and the 4 of us enlisted at the same time. We all decided that we're not going to get drafted, and nobody wanted to go in the Army. It wasn't the Army, it was the Army, you know. That was not exactly the favorite choice at the time. So one of them went in the Navy, one of them went in the Air Force, and 2 of us went in the Marine Corps. And
What made you choose to go in the Marine Corps?
well, basically, my father was in the Marine Corps in World War I, and he served on the battleship Texas, which is still around.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were that's something too long ago. They're worried about it because the salt water is beginning to take its toll on the ship, and he served on the Texas, and then what was the question? The first part of the question?
Why you wanted to join the Marine Corps?
Oh, well, basically because my father was in it, my 2 brothers were in it, and I could remember I wasn't in it. But I can remember my oldest son, he went in the Marine Corps later on, years later. And my other son, he didn't want to go in the Marine Corps, and he came to me one day very apologetically, asked me if it'd be all right if he joined the Navy. I said, I don't care which one you join. If you want to go in the service, go with the one you want to go in. So he went in and he spent 4 years in the Navy. And
your 2 brothers, were they much older than you?
not a lot, no. My oldest brother was maybe 4 years older than me, and my other brother was probably just about 2.5 years older than me.
And they both joined the Marine Corps?
Yeah, they both.
Were they in the service before you or after you?
Before me. They were in right at the end of World War II.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, the oldest brother was on Guam in the 3rd Infantry Division, and they were preparing for the invasion of Japan at that time. And my other brother, who was in the 2nd Division Air Wing, but he was a year or so behind my older brother. But he was also in that area at the time, so if we had gone to war or gone into Japan as invasion, they probably both would have been involved in it.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So you had a history of the Navy and Marine Corps anyway?
Right, yeah.
From your father?
Yeah.
Did you know any more stories about your father on the Texas, or?
Not really, not really. That's all I know, that he served on the Texas, and part of the Marine detachment, which they still do have a Marine detachment on.
Yeah.
No, other than I don't have any kind of lengthy details on exactly.
So where did you join the Marine Corps at? Did you go to an office here in Cincinnati, or?
Yeah, downtown, right downtown, and I guess down at the
The old post office building, or?
What's the one down in I forget where, on Court Street.
On Court Street?
I forget exactly which might have been, right. I'm not really sure. I don't really exactly remember.
Okay. So, did you have any trouble joining the Marine Corps?
No, not a problem at all.
And so you went down, they give you the paperwork. Did you have to have your mother sign it, or what?
No, I was old enough. I could do it on my own.
All right.
And I turned 19 before I got out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was 20 years old when I enlisted.
You were 20 when you enlisted?
Yeah, it would have been 20, yeah.
Yeah. And so take us in from, did they ship you out right away, or did you go home for a while?
No, you went home for 3 or 4 days. Because they put us up at the Y for the night when we went down and enlisted. So we were supposed to stay there, so we said, we ain't gonna stay here tonight. It was Saturday night, I think. We ended up down at the bar on our side, and then come back, and then the next day we boarded the train down at the terminal. That's the terminal now, and we went by train to Parris Island,
Where's Parris Island?
South Carolina, Beaufort, South Carolina.
Tell us about your,
What is what?
so you took a train there,
Yeah.
and you got off the train. Did anybody greet you there? Or?
Oh yeah, the life changed immediately.
That's
What
I'm curious about.
Oh yeah, it wasn't, oh hey guys, I had to meet you or anything. It was, better straighten out. So you knew right away you were in for some interesting months. So it was about 3 months at Parris Island, and about halfway through they start treating you more like a Marine than as just a dumb recruit.
Who greeted you there?
Well, your drill instructor greeted you.
They call him a DI?
Yep.
And what was his name?
Sergeant Bellinger. He was the first one, and his assistant was Corporal Jones. So they had us for 3 months down there.
So you get off the train, you're greeted by them.
Yep.
And it was a shock to you, you say?
Yeah, okay, yeah, oh yeah, it was a shock. It was a definite shock. They told you to line up here, and then there would be two companies being lined up separately, and the drill sergeants would be out in front, and they'd be talking, and you could hear what they were saying. It wasn't going to be a pleasant day. So, they really got your ass right down. And back to the barracks, and that was it for at least two and a half months. It was tough.
Tell us about what do they do? Shave your head to begin with, or what?
Have to do what?
They shave your head to begin
Oh
with?
yeah, the second day you went to the barber and totally shaved, completely. And they kept it that way until you come off of the rifle range. When you went to the rifle range, they start treating you more like a Marine than a recruit. And
tell us about some of your physical training during the first.
Well, you did basically. They get you out and do calisthenics, but most of the physical was drill on the drill field. That was what most of your physical activity was. You didn't do a lot of push-ups and stuff like that. That was kind of like, I guess if they didn't have nothing else to do that afternoon, they'd call you out and do some physical activity, but it wasn't an everyday routine.
You had overnight bivouacs and things of that nature too?
No.
No.
We were
Well,
enlisted.
You hear some horror stories about Parris Island, especially when you were going through it.
They're basically true. It's not what you call a vacation, a 3-month vacation in South Carolina. It's tough.
What period of time were you there?
Well, it would have been from I guess it was around September till I'm not really sure about exactly what 3 months it was.
September, October, November?
Yeah.
Well, September is a hot month in South Carolina to begin with.
Yeah, well, it wasn't super hot. It was acceptable. It wasn't like you were going to have a heat stroke or anything like that. Although there were guys that would go down. Now, years later, I went down there to Parris Island. My one son went through, and I watched them out, and I couldn't believe it. They had the company would be out drilling, and they'd have about 6 or 7 guys that'd be over on the sidelines, kneeling and taking a break. I thought, what the hell has happened in the Marine Corps, for Christ's sake? You didn't just, when it got to be a little too much effort, you didn't just go over and take a break. I don't know what would have happened that day. You didn't. But it changed. Even then it changed. And we're going back into the, 60s? What would he be, around the 60s that Steve went in the Marine Corps? I don't know, 70s, 70, whatever. But you could see it had changed quite a bit as far as discipline-wise.
Tell us about the rifle range. What type of weapons you trained on?
Trained with a M1 rifle. I spent 3 weeks on the rifle range. First week it was just practice with snapping in, how the proper procedure, this and that, the other thing, and you practice that, practice that, practice that. And then the second week you'd start going out onto the range and firing, which you would fire for 6 or 7 days. And then the third week you went out to fire, and then you fired for qualifications. And then after 3 weeks, then you went back to base camp, and you kind of just finished up, because after a rifle range, you were pretty well done with the basic training. It was just a lot of sort of routine.
Can you still break down an M1 Garand?
Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah. I could, with my eyes closed. Oh yeah. That was
outstanding.
yeah.
Outstanding.
Oh yeah. That was, you weren't supposed to there. You weren't supposed to break it down. You're supposed to clean it, but if they caught you breaking it down, which you have to do. What was the joke of it? You'd clean it the regular ways, and they'd say, "Oh, you'd pass the inspection." They would inspect you every other day, whatever. And at one time, I broke it all down. I mean, I cleaned it meticulously. Went out. We had the inspection that day. He said the rifle's dirty. I said, "How can it be dirty, for Christ's sake?" I had it all apart. I know damn right well it was as clean as it could possibly get. But they were going to let you know that they were going to call whatever they wanted to call when they wanted to call it. So that was not. So that's the last time I broke it down while I was in boot camp. But anyhow.
So you graduate from boot camp.
Yep.
And what type of ceremony is there?
Well, we didn't have a great big ceremony at the time because the Korean War was going on. So we'd have, at that time, well, we would have about maybe 6 companies all graduate at the same time. So you'd have a parade, and the couple companies were graduated would be in the front, because they would be meticulously drilled, in step, perfect and everything. And then the companies behind, as they went down the road, the ones that just got here, they'd be wandering around behind you. So, but that was it wasn't a great big celebration.
You recall when you graduated from boot camp?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
About what time was that?
What, the day, week, or I don't know.
Month?
It was, I guess, I don't know, afternoon, mid-afternoon.
No, I mean, what month was it?
Oh, well, I went in down there and what was it, June? I guess around September.
How long was boot camp? 90 days?
90 days, yeah. I'm trying to think.
Where were you on Christmas of 1950? Let's put it that way.
I think I might have been in California.
Did you get to come home after your first?
Yeah, we got a 10-day leave after boot camp.
So you came back to Cincinnati?
No, we came back to Cincinnati, and then had to go back to Parris Island, and then from there you got on a troop train and went to California.
I see.
And that was about a 4-day trip, which wasn't all bad because everybody had their own bunk and their own booth, so, and you got 3 meals a day, and they just sort of left you alone.
Pretty good chow on a train?
Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, good.
And where did you go out in California? Where at?
Camp Pendleton.
Where's that located?
That's about midway between Los Angeles and San Diego. It's about 100 miles to San Diego, or to Pendleton, and maybe about 60 or 70 miles to
San Diego.
San Diego, yeah.
What was the purpose of being there? More training or what?
Yeah, that's when you went into infantry training. That's when you actually learned how to deal with combat. If you were ever in, they would set up different scenarios each day that put you through a different, how to assault a hill, you know, and all that kind of stuff. Whatever went into combat, that they were teaching you how to do that. And that went on for, well, 3 months. No, it wasn't 3 months. That was more like 2 months.
You recall when you got to Pendleton?
Do what?
When you got to Pendleton?
Yeah.
When was it?
Oh, it was shortly after January, I think, if I recall. It was right, somewhere around the Christmas time. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I know I wasn't home for Christmas. I got home from Christmas from Parris Island after Christmas, and then after that went to Pendleton. Well, that was a trip out, so that would have been. It had to be sometime in late January.
Okay.
We got to Pendleton.
Yeah. And you're there for what, 2 months?
About 2 months, as I recall, yeah. And then boarded troop ships at San Diego and headed for Korea.
Now, were you assigned to a certain division while you were still at Pendleton?
No.
So
No.
when you got on the troop ship, you didn't know
No.
who you were going
Well,
to...
what happened is was 2 troop ships went over. One I was on one called Menard, and Menard, and the other was called the Menifee. And I guess there was about 300 on each ship. I'm not sure exactly how many.
Mm-hmm.
But this was not too long after the North Koreans invaded North Korea, and then we had assaulted them, and then they had pushed. That's when the Chinese came in. So we would. How the hell would you try to think? Where were we at here?
Which ship were you on?
I was on the Menard.
Menard.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Okay. Somewhere, I have no idea how the division occurred, but our ship was broken up to fill vacancies all through the division that had occurred when the war moved south and the Chinese
You were
moved
going to be
south.
replacements?
Replacements, yeah. And I ended up in as being assigned to Signal Battalion in the 1st Division. Have no idea why. And I was the only one in the group at the time, and I was there for about 2 weeks, and nobody told me to do anything. I just wandered around.
Did you land at Pusan?
Yeah.
On the Menard? Yeah.
Pusan was, it wasn't there. It was just a big pile of rubble, the whole damn city. It was totally, how anybody survived it, I have no idea. But then, whatever.
You said you...
We took the division, I was at the division for at least 2 weeks, and nobody gave me a job to do or anything. I just wandered over to the mess hall to eat, and then the one day finally they come around and said, come here. Put us on a truck, headed us up north. We got up there, and there was, I think we had a picture there of a whole group of guys that were from all over. What had happened, the team that was there before us, that we replaced or whatever, the division was in, or the battalion, I forget which, was in reserve for rest, or for how long, I don't know. And they said they were there for several weeks. And then they were told they couldn't move out, they were going to move out. And they said they got into their van. They always had a radio van and a cargo van. And they got into that, and they said the one van, they said it didn't go 10 yards, and it hit a landmine. And it killed all of them.
The whole team?
Yeah, so we were the replacements for that. That team was called a Naval Gunfire Liaison control team. And I was in what was the air control. So what we got charged with was training how to call in airstrikes and control planes, tell them what to do, how to do it, where to go, and everything. And that's where I spent the rest of the career, in the rest of the time in Korea.
You said your team. How many men were in your team?
There were 8 men and 2 officers. with 8 enlisted men and 2, one was a captain, but the first one was Captain Cunningham, and for some reason I can't think of the lieutenant's name. But they were 2 regular Marines, yeah. Then the ones we got after that were reserve officers that had been called in, and it wasn't the same.
When they called those reserve officers in, did they stayed for the duration, didn't they?
I have no idea.
Yeah. They just weren't too happy about being called
They weren't too happy about being called in. I mean, they were out civilian jobs and everything, and all of a sudden, I met my one brother in the first, he was in shortly after the Second World War. He got called back during the Korean War. So he was back in for about a year and a half, and then they let him go.
Was he anywhere near you in Korea?
No. I don't think he ever went overseas with that. He was the Second Air Wing was the outfit he was with. Mm-hmm. Other than that,
you had 8 men in your team. Do you recall who they were?
Yeah, I recall some of them. We had one guy. We had a picture of him.
Aquino.
Hey, what?
Did you say his name was Aquino?
Yeah, Dante Aguano. Yeah, he was one of he was one of the ones that was like us, like me, brought in from whatever to make up a team. And then there was I can picture him. I know him well, but I can't think of his name.
I think I ruined his name. What was his name? The guy you just said.
Aguano, Dante Aguano.
Dante Aguano.
From Detroit, Michigan. I don't know why I remember him. So
yeah.
He was just a neat guy to be around, and then after 3 months, half of them were gone because they had been there long enough to fill out their. There he is. There, mm-hmm. There he's gonna. Now I can't try to think of his name. He was from Brooklyn, New York. I remember him real well, and I remember him too. He was from up in Illinois. What the hell is the one town up in? I can't think. And that's me there. And I don't recall where these 2 here were from.
Now, was this team there the whole time with you?
No, like I say, they started
being rotated?
Rotating them within about a couple months after I got, because they were all pulled from other outfits. Where they could, for whatever reason, they could spare them.
Well, how long were you on the line, so to speak, like with
Well, I was with them for a year, almost a year.
With this group?
But no. This group was, by the time I was old enough. Oh hell, I don't know. No, by the time I was old enough, these guys were all gone. They had been rotated. I think he was maybe one of the first 2 or 3 months after we got together. He was ready to be sent home. See, these were almost all of them were gone. They were gone before I was gone.
Okay, so they send in replacements for them.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
But you always had 8 men in your team.
Yeah, always had 8 men.
And what was your job at this team?
Is what?
What was your function?
Well, we split in half. Would be 4 men and an officer, 4 men and an officer. There was always one team was back at the company base camp, and the other one was always up on the line. And the one up on the line would be on the radio. They had contact with the battalion headquarters, and they're the ones who would get instructions to hit a certain target, or they would see a target availability, get on the radio, call in for an airstrike. They would go back to the base camp or the headquarters for the planes, and then they would send up usually 4 planes at a time, and they would call an airstrike.
Did you pick out targets, or did you just relay information?
We talked to the pilots. I didn't. The enlistment didn't. The pilots talked to the pilots on the radio. We were in charge of keeping the radios working. I don't know if you've ever seen an Angler 9 radio where one guy had to sit on the pedals and that powered the radio that they could talk to the pilots or talk to the...
So that's the generator that...
Yeah, basically that's what it was, yeah.
Now the two officers then that were in charge of your team, they were both pilots?
Yeah, oh yeah, the pilots were always, the officers were always pilots, even when it was the reserve officers. They were previous pilots. Yeah, because they were the ones who talked to the pilots, and they, would be able to communicate more clearly what they wanted.
When you're on these mountaintops, calling in these airstrikes, how are those mountaintops identified? Is it like...
Well, they were given height numbers. I remember one, and one I remember was 675, which meant it was 675 feet high.
Right.
And I think there was another one like it was 1024. I don't know. But that's about the only ones I vaguely remember, because it really wasn't important to us what the hell was a mountain.
Right.
It was. You were there. That's all.
Are you literally on top of the mountains?
Yeah.
Or
Oh yeah. You were topping right on the edge, because you had to be able to look out and see your target and what what you wanted to hit or where it was. So the officer could do that, so he could talk to the pilots. And in the Marine Corps, they were very first class in close air support. They would usually 4 planes, most of the time it was Corsairs. 3 of them would continue to orbit, and the 4th one, the squad leader or whatever, he would come down and you would try to talk him under the target, and when he thought he had it, he would make a run on it. And he might just use his machine guns, or he might even hit, mostly it was napalm bombs was most of the time, because they were usually hitting bunkers and caves and this and that, and unless you hit the cave or the bunker directly with the bomb, you're not going to really accomplish it. But if you hit it with napalm, and that covers out a humongous area, and it's going to kill anybody that's in that area. So that would be that's what the officers would basically do: control the airstrike and tell them where and what that. And then after the first one hit, they would tell them you were too high, if you were to the upper, lower, whatever, or you're right on the target, go ahead. And if he went right on the target, then the other 3 would start coming in and doing the same thing.
They come in one at a time?
One at a time, yeah. Yeah, one at a time.
Did you call in Air Force crews any also?
We had, I remember twice we had Air Force, and it was talk about wasted taxpayer money, because they didn't want to do close air support. I think what the hell was the name of the Air Force general at the time, I think. But he didn't believe in close air support. That was mundane to him. Let them take care of themselves. So we got twice, I remember, and it was as soon as the first one came in, the other 3 would be right behind him, and if he missed the target by 1,000 yards, they all missed the target by 1,000 yards. And you just tell them, go home. It was Air Force didn't believe in close air support.
Now, when you're calling in this close air support, there are infantry troops down there on the ground. Are troops?
Sometimes mostly it would be on the line. It would be kind of like a standoff situation. Mm-hmm. But if they were going to do an assault, then you would call in a strike on a specific area that they wanted to try to soften.
Well, you're in an exposed position, being
well, you were semi-exposed, yeah, right. And there would be a couple times where we had to get the hell out of there because the gooks would finally figure out where they thought
where
you were, and then they had their favorite. They had a 120 millimeter Russian mortar or a 76 flat trajectory rifle. Now the mortars, you could hear them go off, because they would be on the other side of the mountain. You know, I mean, that's a big mortar. And you can hear a mortar come in. It waffles. It doesn't whistle or anything. It's just like a bird taking off, you know, a waffle on it. And but you would only have about 3 or 4 seconds, and you better respond and when you hit the goddamn ground quick when you heard that, because it was going to be close. And then the 76 mortars, or rifles, you could hear it go off, and you could hear it come in because it whistled coming in, but it could only hit the front side of the hill. So if you got on the back side, if it hit the top, it just went on over and on down. So, but the mortars, they could hit the front, the back, they hit the ridge. You never knew where they were going to hit until you heard the damn thing waffling. And if you heard it waffling, you better hit the ground pretty damn quick. I remember the very first time we were just joining the group up on the front, and there was about 6 of us walking up a path, and all of a sudden you hear this waffling. Well, none of us knew. We didn't, didn't even really realize what. But you couldn't see anybody else. They were all flat on the ground, and it didn't hit close to us, but it was close enough. You heard it coming in, and they heard it coming in, and they were familiar. Well, after that, you heard it. You knew it. You better hit the ground. So it's going to be close. And a 120 millimeter mortar, that's a big mortar.
Yes.
Yeah, ours it was a 4.2 was the biggest one, and so our artillery is 105 millimeter and 155 millimeter, so it's in between them. So it's it's a mortar, but it's more of a goddamn cannon than it is a mortar.
You know, it's hard for us to visualize what those mountains and valleys look like.
Yeah.
When you're on top of that mountain there, that you're calling in airstrikes, how far do you see off into the distance?
Well, you'd see to the opposite mountain, which it could be, sometimes it could be like being up in Mount Adams and looking at Price Hill, or sometimes it'd be like just maybe a mile across, or maybe less than a mile. It would be the mountain where the gooks were. So there was never any way of telling exactly how far away you were going to be until you got up there. So whatever.
Was it rifle range?
Well, no. I being a rifle ball would have carried that far, but you wouldn't be able to hit anything at that distance.
So you're covering quite an area while you're up there.
Oh yeah,
How often did you stay in a position? How often did you move, in other words?
Oh, we would stay in that position sometimes for a month. If there was nothing going on where there was any pushing, shoving, or whatever, you just stayed right there.
How close to the 38th parallel were you?
We were a little bit, most of the time when I was there, a little bit south of it. We never did get back up to the hell's the capital, Busan?
Seoul.
Seoul, no, we never got that far up.
You were never
pretty close to the 38th parallel.
Yeah. Were you ever in Seoul?
Do what?
Were you ever in Seoul?
No.
No.
No. No, I went to Busan when we got there. What was left of it, which wasn't much.
How long were you in Korea physically?
About a year.
About a
year. That's what the normal duty time was, a year. Yeah. So,
were you part of the 1st Division while you were in Korea?
Well, we were attached to the 1st Division. It was a signal company, signal battalion, 1st Division. And we were an outfit called ANGLICO, which was Air Naval Gunfire Liaison. And then we were a separate part of that. So we were kind of our own little thing. Because I can remember one time when we got in the reserve for a couple of weeks, and we were only there a couple of days, and the major from the battalion came in and he told the captain, he says, I need a couple of your men for guard duty. And I can never forget it. Here's a major full-blown major, and a captain, and it was Cunningham, and he was sitting on the edge of his bunk, and he just looked at him, he said, "Major," he said, "we're an attached unit. We don't do guard duty." And the major turned around and walked out the door. And that was it. We didn't do guard duty.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was really a luxury we had, that we were really self-sufficient, self-contained. We didn't have to answer to anybody except the 2 officers we had.
What was the weather like while you were on the?
I went through the full-blown weather. The winter was lousy, the summers were hot. But
what about the boots you had during the winter time?
the what?
The boots?
The first ones we were issued were useless. I mean, they were terrible. I mean, your feet froze in them, and you were out there for any time. And it wasn't too long, and they came out with a new set of boots, which were good, really good. I don't recall what they called them or whatever they were, but they were insulated, better insulated boots. Yeah. The first, I forget what the hell they called the boots the first time. Was
well, we had a lot of we had a lot of frozen feet, and
a lot of what?
There were cases of a lot of frozen feet in
Korea. Oh yeah.
And I just.
That was right, yeah. And that's why, because even with the boots on, it didn't help any. And then they were further up north when that happened, and the weather was a hell of a lot colder up there. So I was never in the area where the winters were really, really bitter cold. That was maybe 100 miles further north when you start getting up close to the Alley River.
When you were there, you initially went in with your 8 enlisted men, and then the other 7 were transferred out, and you got 7 new men.
No, never. We'd only get maybe one at a time.
One at a time.
One at a time. It depended, because each one was there for a different length of time. And when one of them would hit his year there, they'd come and get him. I can remember, I was in charge at the time, a sergeant at the time, and we had just moved from the East Coast to the East Central Coast, which was about a 3-day journey in the back of a pickup truck, because it was raining the whole damn time and everything. And I can remember we were pretty well settled in, and I never gave it a thought. Finally, I forget who it was from the company would come in and said, "Pick up your gear and report back to the division. You're rotated." I said, "Ooh, I'm out of here." So that's exactly what I did. I just got my stuff together and said, "See you guys."
So you did your year there.
Yeah. I knew I was there a year, but I wasn't really thinking about it or looking forward to being rotated. But that's the way it happened.
Did you got a promotion, sort of like a spot promotion, so to speak, to buck sergeant?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that was gotten by as you moved up through the ranks. They promoted somebody right out of the team. They didn't bring in a stranger. And when you got up to be at the top, you got to be buck sergeant. But it was a temporary promotion. When I got back and they discharged me, I went back to corporal. So that's what my rank is on any paperwork I got.
Did you get paid as a buck sergeant for a while?
I have no idea, because the payday was, I was like, well, what the hell did you do with it? It was, you didn't get cash, you got what the hell they call it, I forget what it was. Just funny money that you used in Korea.
Right.
Yeah. It was worthless outside of Korea. So whatever, but you got paid, but didn't amount to anything.
Did you pick up anything, any artifacts or anything like that while you were in Korea?
No, there wasn't really much to pick up.
Did you get any liberty at all while you were on those mountains?
No, that was started after I left. That they did start. Everybody would get to go back for a week of R&R. Yeah, we didn't get R&R the first year. You were there for a year, and that's where you were for a year, and made the best of it. We did get our beer ration, though. They always got the beer ration to you.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
Here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me get this lid off for you.
Thank you.
So you got a beer ration.
Yeah.
And what that consist of? One or two bottles?
No, it'd be 6 cans usually.
6 cans?
6 cans, yeah.
Tell us about the food arrangement up there on these hilltops.
Well, you're
Or
strictly
mountaintops.
strictly on sea ration when you're up there on the hill. Now, if you're going to be there for quite a while, the company was going to be there for quite a while, they would set up a place in behind the hill down the road, or down the hill some, where you could take turns going down there and you could get a hot meal. But other than that, you were just living out of K ration, sea ration, not K ration.
Yeah. What is a sea ration?
Well, it's just a can about, you used to get a bottle like that of water, a can about that big around, about that high, and then it would have about 6 different things. You had beans and wieners, I'm trying to think of how I can't think of it.
Do you have any Spam?
No, didn't get any Spam. I don't know why.
So you had different concoctions of food in
Right,
each little
right.
can?
Yeah, that's all.
How how was that? How did it taste?
So, most of it was pretty good, yeah. I'm trying to think of the one that nobody really wanted. They tried to trade it off, and it would make its rounds around everybody and say, I'll give you 2 cans of this if you'll take this. But, damn, what the hell was that? I'm trying to think. I'll think of it. But other than that, most of them were pretty good. And then they had snacks in with it. They have a candy bar, some cookies or whatever that. But other than that.
Did any of your men, part of your team, get hit while you were on that in the mountains?
Any what?
Any of your men get hit or wounded while you were on top of the mountains there?
No, we were fortunate. Even when we got shelled, while I was there, nobody got hit. Came close at times, but fortunately, none of us ever got hit.
How many different hilltops would you say, or mountaintops is the right word, I guess,
Was I on or that are there?
that you were on?
I was probably on 4, whatever. Every time the company would move, we would move with them.
Which company was it? Do you recall?
I think, if I recall, it was C Company, but I'm not really positive about it. Because that was just who we were with. We weren't part of them, really.
Right.
We were always just an attached unit. So who we were with today, next week, it might have been with somebody else if they wanted you to move or relocate or something like that.
I think you mentioned at one time that they even called in some artillery from battleships.
Yeah. I thought I went over that, where the guy come up and he was the observer for the Navy, and he said he's got okay for a fire mission. And so we said, oh, good, we get to watch this. And I forget which battleship. It was either the New Jersey or I'm not sure which one it was. Probably the New Jersey. It was the one that was mostly off there. And he called in, gave him the coordinates of the mountain, the opposite side that he wanted it to hit and everything. And then finally when they said, okay, whatever, he gave, okay, fire at will. So they fired, and boy, you could hear them things coming in. I mean, 16 inches, boy, and you think, ooh, I hope they're right. And boy, you heard them hit. We never seen him hit. He missed the goddamn mountain entirely. He said, you gotta be shitting. And then the best part was he called in the results of his fire mission. And we said, are you kidding? You gotta be shitting. Boy, I don't know how many bunkers he took out, how many possible killed IA, what is that. And he didn't even see a shell hit. We said, how the hell can you do that? He said, if I told him the truth, I'd never get approved for another goddamn mission. I said, okay. That's the only naval gunfire mission And they always say naval gunfire is about the most accurate there is.
Yes.
And that's what, he had to give them wrong information, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't think it was out on the ship that was
How
the problem.
far from the coast were you when that happened? Roughly in your...
We were within about 10 miles of the coast, because when we were up on the mountain, you could see the ocean out there. But we couldn't see the ship that whatever time this was. But anyhow, it was kind of hilarious when you think about it. All that power and all that money and all that, and all we did was blow holes in some mountain over here someplace. Whatever, but I don't know if he ever got another mission or not, because he left.
Did you get into any villages or towns that you recall?
No.
You were always on the mountaintops?
Yeah, no, never. The only time we seen a village was when we were in transit of some kind. And then usually it was the remains of a village. Because the villagers, they bailed out. They got the hell as far away behind us as they could get because they didn't want to be anywhere near what was going on. So we never got into a village or what was left of a village.
So when your year is up, you're not even thinking about your year being up.
No, not really.
Somebody comes along and says...
Yeah, just I was just there one day and sit there, and then he walks in and he said, get your dinner together. He said, you're going home. Go report back to division. And I said, ooh, okay. It didn't take me long to pick up. And then find a ride back to division. And then out of there.
Where was division at? Were they back in the city or in a town? Or?
They would have been. They were always, the division headquarters was always about 20 miles below the front lines. And it's hard to say where they would be. I wouldn't know that. They were back there, that's all you knew.
Yeah.
But other than that, you got there one time, maybe I think we were on Division Reserve one time, which you got to go all the way back to Division because there was a little more fringe benefits being at the division headquarters than there was battalion or company headquarters.
Yeah.
So other than that, I think maybe one time got back to division headquarters.
So you went back there by yourself, nobody else from your team?
No, they would send the whole team back once in a while.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you'd have four guys and an officer on line, and 4 guys and an officer back at company, and then because they always kept you together, when you went into some kind of a reserve status, you were all together, and then you'd be together for as long as you were in reserve back there. So if you went back to battalion headquarters, if you were on reserve, you were all together. You went back to the company would be different. Then you were divided.
So you went back to division headquarters?
One time, as I recall.
When they relieved you off the mountain?
Well, it would be after you, when they would pull the whole company off of the mountain, you'd come off with it.
So when you were, your year was up there, where did they send you? What did you do with you?
I had to go back to Pusan, get back to division headquarters, and then they trucked you on back down to Pusan. I don't think we did go to Pusan. I think we might have boarded ship at Incheon. I recall about that. I'm not really sure. I think it was we boarded ship at Incheon when I was going back to Japan. Because instead of taking you all the way back to Pusan, Incheon was a lot closer.
Okay. And where did you land in Japan?
Kobe, Japan.
Kobe?
That's where we landed going over and landed coming back. And you get to Kobe, half of your ship would leave the first night you were there, one night, and the next half would get it the next night, and after that, The next stop was Busan, Japan, or Busan, Korea.
Oh, well, that was going over, but
Both ways.
Yeah.
Both ways.
Oh,
coming back, he stopped at Kobe too, and
then back to Korea?
no, then home.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did you take, you remember the ship you took coming back from Kobe to home?
I do. As a matter of fact, I got a picture of it.
'Cause you
I
went over
think it
on-
was a General Weigel or Weigel. I'm not really positive. I have to look and see if the picture's got the
You
name.
went over on the Menard.
Went over on the Menard. Those are APAs. Those are basically landing craft ships that they, like the World War II, what took the troops in close enough to
APA.
to land. Yeah, an APA. Yeah.
Amphibious personnel assault
Yeah.
ships, yeah.
Yeah.
So you came back, and where did they take you when you came back? Where'd you land?
Down to San Diego.
You never went to Hawaii and stopped there any?
No.
Thought maybe you might.
Oh, we got to Hawaii later on when my one boy was in the Navy.
Yeah.
But I never got there.
Did you buy any souvenirs or pick up any souvenirs in Kobe?
I didn't. I bought a couple for well, she was my wife at the time, which I still have with a little music box, jewelry music box.
Uh-huh.
Still got it at home.
Yeah.
And that's about the only thing I can remember that I bought as any kind of a souvenir.
So you're going back and you land at Pendleton again, or where?
No, went back to San Diego and got discharged from San Diego.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. How long were you in the Marine Corps total then?
2 years active duty.
Mm-hmm.
I went in 6 months in training, a year in Korea, and then the whatever time it took after I come back before they discharged me.
So you were discharged at San Diego?
Yeah, yeah.
How'd you get home?
Flew home.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I remember flying home. Flew from there and went to Chicago. And we had a layover at Chicago for, I don't know, a day or two. And then from there to Cincinnati.
Did you stay in touch with any of your buddies from the Marine Corps?
Very little, very little. Had one little get-together with a fellow that I forget what little town he was up in Ohio. And that was about it.
You go to any?
Well, you didn't, because you were only together for like 3 months, and you weren't any place where you could party together like, well, you could, you can and beer sitting in a tent or whatever. But as far as going to...
Let me interrupt you right there. For posterity's sake, do you remember the beer, what kind it was?
It was one of the big it was like a Budweiser or
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a good beer. It wasn't
No Mabel Black Label or nothing like that?
No. You know, they got good beer.
Okay.
That was the one thing they could do. Well, whatever. But yeah, that was had no. Well, the problem is you were going to drink it anyhow, whether you thought it was great or not.
Yeah.
But as I recall, it was pretty well always one of the big brands.
Okay.
I think they donated it all to, you know, the breweries would donate it to the services.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but
Do what?
I said I'm sorry I interrupted you there. So, have you gone to any reunions, or anything of that nature?
I'm trying to think. No. Well, we never had a reunion because everybody was from all over.
Yeah, and you were a small outfit to
Right.
begin with.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because I think the closest, I'm trying to think, he lived in Illinois, Peoria, Illinois. I guess that's the one guy. I couldn't think of his name, but he was in Peoria, Illinois. And another one was from up in, I forget what, up in Ohio. But they were the closest ones. The rest of them were for God knows where anymore. I don't know. One was from Brooklyn. One was from Detroit. One was from Peoria. And then there was another one later, a replacement. He was from New York. And he was a typical kid New Yorker. You think, oh, for Christ's sake, shut up. He thought, wow, whoopee, I'm from New York. But who cares? But actually, it's a picture. You got him holding a rifle across. You see, got that picture there? Yeah. I can't think of his name.
Have you ever talked to any one of them since then that you served with?
No. No.
No. Did you?
I think I wrote a couple letters. Yeah, that's it. I can't think of his name. He was a nice kid, but he was a typical New Yorker.
Did you, when you were discharged, did you keep your uniform?
Did I what?
Did you keep your Marine Corps uniform?
For a long time I did, yeah.
Do you still have it?
No, I don't. We lived in College Hill, and I had it, still had it then. And then I think somewhere around there, I think my mother got rid of it or whatever it was, and at the time, I didn't really care.
Right.
Later on, I kind of, I wish the hell I had kept it, but
yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to get into it anyhow now, so it'd be just something to hang on and look at.
Well, there's another subject I want to get on. Now, when you're in the Marine Corps after or during high school, have you got a girlfriend or a lady that you're seeing regularly?
How was this now?
Do you have a girlfriend when you're in high school and in the Marine Corps?
Not really. Not really. I didn't start going with my wife until, I think I did in high school, but we really didn't start dating or anything that much until after I got out of the service.
Did you write to her while you were in the service?
Yeah, I think I did, yeah.
Well, you must have been dating her then, or you wouldn't have been.
Well, you didn't date too much back then. Hell, you didn't. First of all, you didn't have a car, so you had to depend on somebody else if you wanted to date. And she lived up in Corryville. I lived in Northside, so it's not like your girlfriend down the square, you know.
Well, how long did you go with her when you were in high school?
Not very long. I think we first started dating as a junior, but we didn't. It wasn't like
what is her name? Or
Mary Mangold.
Mary
Mangold. Mangold.
Mangold.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so you wrote her while you were in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, but I wrote to a couple other girls too. That it wasn't. We weren't, like you say, steady.
Oh, okay.
You know, pair.
Right.
We were still just whatever. Still testing the water, so to speak, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
But other than that, very, very routine.
So when you got discharged, you went to Chicago. That's where you landed in a plane. Then you flew to Cincinnati, or?
From Chicago.
Yeah.
San Diego to Chicago, from Chicago. And I think we just had a layover in Chicago one day or something.
So what'd you do when you got home?
I probably was only home a month when I got a job.
Where was your first job at?
I worked at American District Telegraph.
American?
ADT.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for a year and a half.
What'd you do there?
Well, installed security systems.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, most.
Oh, ADT. That's
ADT, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like burglar alarm.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Was that Calcrim or?
Huh?
Like Calcrim?
In a way, yeah. In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you have a girlfriend at this time then, one that you're dating regularly?
I dated other girls, yeah. It wasn't like I say, it wasn't like we were engaged or going steady, so to speak, until maybe, I guess, shortly before we did get engaged.
Yeah. You recall, and when did you get engaged, would you say?
Oh boy, I don't know.
When did you get married?
Up at St. George in Corryville.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where they had the big fire.
Did what?
The big fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was a lot of years later.
I know.
Yeah.
When did you get married at St. George's?
When? Would have been September 12th. What the hell year would it have been? Ain't that awful? Do you remember when? Huh?
It would have to be 53, because I was born.
53, right. She was born in 54, yeah.
All right,
September 12th, 1953.
And your wife's name again?
Mary Mangold.
Mary Mangle.
Yeah.
And did you meet Mary, if I can call her that, while you were in high school?
Yeah, yeah. I
And-
think probably first date was when we were juniors. But we didn't go steady or anything. I was dating
Right.
other girls too. And she was dating other boys.
Yeah. Did Mary have a job when you got married? Was she working?
Yeah, she worked for the city of Cincinnati. What the hell department was it? I can't think of the department. But that's where she worked with the city.
City.
Yeah.
And did she continue working there during your marriage, or?
Until she got pregnant. When she got pregnant, after about 6 months, she quit. And then that was it until after the kids were all raised, she thought she'd like to go back and get a job. But she couldn't get back in the old job that she had down there. So she ended up working for, what the hell's the department it was? It wasn't, who? Shillito's, yeah. She ended up working over at Shillito's over off of the Harrison Avenue, over at the Western Hills Shopping Center.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she worked there for about 8 years. And then I retired in 58, and she retired in 59. Or no,
You mean-
88 and 89.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
right. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you and Mary got married on September the 12th, 1953. Who were her parents?
Hilda and Freddie Mangold. They owned the Ohio Cafe up on McMillan Street. It's right the next block down from St. George Church.
Right.
On Calhoun Street. You know
Yeah.
where Calhoun is?
I sure do.
Huh?
I sure do.
Oh, okay.
The Ohio.
Yeah, that's right. You're from that area. Yeah, I'm from that.
The Ohio Cafe.
Ohio Cafe, yeah. My father-in-law and a buddy of him owned that bar.
I see.
Yeah. And my brother-in-law Russell worked for him. I don't know. You might have known Russell.
Yeah, good hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a bit of a character.
And how many children did you have?
Four.
You and Mary.
Four.
And,
Four boys.
excuse me?
Take the first one. She was the first one. 3 boys and a girl. She was the first one, and then the next 3 were boys.
And your first child, her name is
Janine.
Janine,
Yeah.
and her date of birth?
What is it? 620. Yeah, 620.
June the 20th of 1954.
54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then your boys' names? Oldest first?
Steve was the oldest one. Tim was the second, and Keith was the youngest.
Are all of your sons still living?
No, Keith died in 1994, I believe it was. Yeah. Yeah.
84? Yeah.
84, right. Yeah.
And how many grandchildren do you have?
That's a good count. We got a count on the grandchildren now? Hmm.
4, 7,
Well, there's
8.
8 grandchildren?
8, yeah.
And any great-grandchildren?
Not yet,
Not yet? I
not
see.
yet. Have we got any on the way?
Because Jonathan has.
Who?
Jonathan?
Oh,
Oh, that's right.
You got
Okay.
2 great-grandkids.
Yeah, right. That's right. I forgot about Jonathan. He's my son's oldest
You
boy.
better clean this act up pretty good. They're going to be watching this, you know.
Yeah, well, I don't care.
So you worked at ADT
Yeah.
when you first came home,
Right.
and you stayed there about a year and a half.
Yeah.
What'd you do after? What'd you quit? Or what'd you
I signed up to take the fire department exam, and I had to wait damn near 9 months before I finally got the call and said the report for fire college.
I said, and when did you start for the Cincinnati Fire Department?
Oh, well, let's see.
Somewhere
Well, I'll
around
tell you right.
about 1954 or what?
Yeah, it would have been 54. Yeah.
When did you retire?
What the hell was it? October 8th, 1988.
So you had
Yeah.
what, 34 years?
34 years, almost 34. Yeah.
What was your job as a firefighter?
Well, I started out as a basic firefighter, then I got promoted to lieutenant, and then got promoted to captain, and then about 4 years before I retired, I got promoted to district chief, and then that's when I retired.
What stations did you work out of?
A lot of them.
Did you ever work out of the one down at Mohawk
Down where?
on Macon Avenue?
Briefly,
Yeah.
but that was as a traveling engineer, what they called it at the time, a traveling engineer. You weren't assigned to any one company. You went and filled in for like vacations and things like that. So I was down there, but that was just very briefly.
Were you on, you were on during the riots?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I was a lieutenant at Engine 34.
Where was
during the
that
riots.
at?
That's at Clifton and Ludlow Avenue, right on the corner of Clifton and
Yeah.
Ludlow.
Yeah. Near the Burnett Woods up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, basically almost across the street from
Right.
it, or it was up the street a little
Yeah.
bit, yeah.
Did you have to go around through Avondale, Reading Road, and those places during the?
Yeah, we were one of the busiest companies in the department at the time, because we were right there at Clifton Ludlow. That was kind of like the center of the riot area, and we were on the road pretty regularly, and we had what they called I forget what I'm trying to think of the name of it. They put together 2 engine companies and a truck company would all travel together. It wasn't one company out by itself, so that way you had the manpower and.
Were you guys armed at that time?
Yeah, that's when they armed us, yeah. And they had arms up until 20 years ago. They still had the arms on them.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could carry your own individual arm, but you also had armament. You had one guy on the apparatus at the time that he was armed with a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
So there was always somebody, and everybody on the company had their own weapon by that time, after about the first day or two.
Right.
Yeah. But other than that, they took them off about 20 years ago, maybe, yeah, somewhere around there.
Did your wife have any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, she had a sister and a brother. They're both gone, Russell and Hilda. God. Hilda died about 2 years before your mother, didn't she?
Yeah.
It was pretty close. And Russell died later on.
How long was the Ohio bar open?
You mean years-wise?
When did it close? Or
I have no idea. I have no idea.
it's not there anymore.
I couldn't even tell you that.
Yeah. I was just curious. Brian, do you have any questions for us?
Just a couple questions. So when you were growing up you grew up in Northside?
Right.
And so you were mentioning, you remember Pearl Harbor. What was some of the things you remember during World War II? Like what kind of rationing? You remember things that would happen?
Well, I remember we used to go to the store, especially for meat. You had to have the coupon book, and then they just take whatever coupons for you. If you wanted sugar, you had to have a coupon for it. And I think most of it was done just to let the public know that we're at war. I don't think it was because there were real shortages of anything like that at all. But I don't really know for sure, but I don't believe, because they always pretty well had what you wanted, but you had to have a coupon to get it. So other than that, the rationing wasn't what you call painful rationing. It wasn't like you did without any real consequences.
I was just wondering, with your mom being a single mom, whether that was rationing, was it harder for you guys, I guess? I don't know.
No, not really. See, my grandmother lived with us, and she pretty well took care of the house and all that. My mother worked 5 days a week, and then even long after my grandmother died, she still continued to work. But by that time, we were all gone. And no, that was the normal life for us. Damn. I know.
With your brother, he went into the Marines.
Both of them did.
World War II?
Both of them did. Right after World War, he was on Guam with the 3rd Infantry Division when they were in the preparation for the invasion of Japan. So in essence, who knows? It might have saved his life when Truman dropped the atomic bomb.
So he was in service when the war was still going on.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, so was the other brother, but he was right at the very tail end of it.
Did they join up or were they drafted?
As far as I know, he joined up. I can't believe he drafted.
Did you, as a kid, remember them writing back? I mean, you were still pretty young.
Remember what?
Your brothers writing back home or anything?
Yeah, I mean, as far as that, yeah, that wasn't a big a deal. They didn't get, at that time, they didn't get like a 30-day leave when they went in. When they went in, they were gone. And you didn't see them until they got discharged. I mean, guys would go in and be gone 4 years and never see home.
Do you remember in your neighborhood there being people like Gold Star mothers or people who had stars in their windows?
Yeah, well, you walked to the north side, there was plenty of Gold Star flags, or everybody had a flag if you had somebody in the service. But yeah, there were quite a few of them with Gold Star flags. As a matter of fact, right at the corner of Blue Rock and Hamilton Avenue was where there was the playgrounds. And right on the corner facing towards the intersection, I mean a board as big as those windows there, the names of everybody from that area that was in the service. And that board was full. So you could find anybody you wanted that was in this, he were on that board. If he was 19, he was on that board because everybody was in the service. They either enlisted on their own or they got drafted. But it was pretty thin as far as guys in their teens, early 20s.
Well, I was wondering, when you were in the Korea, they were calling that police action. I mean, did you?
Well,
what were your thoughts
it's
on
bullshit. they just didn't want to call it a war because they said, oh my God, war, we don't want a war. So we called it a police action. That was, I guess it was, I don't know if Truman came up with that decision or one of his advisors said, yeah, let's give it a little different name. So I guess it worked out all right. But
now, were you over there when MacArthur got relieved?
yeah, I can remember. I was why I don't know. I guess it was a weekend. I'm not really positive about that. And I think I was on a 20 or 48 hour whatever pass. and I was at San Diego in the bus terminal. I don't know why I was in the bus. I have no idea why. But that's when it came over on television that General MacArthur has been relieved from duty by the president, or whatever it was. So I remember that very plainly, him being relieved. So because I was in San Diego at the time, before I went to Korea.
When you were over in Korea, did you have much encounters with civilians, like Korean civilians?
Practically none. Closest encounter we had was they would have, every outfit would have some Koreans who would pack supplies and food and that up to the lines to us, or they would do menial stuff around the base camps, whatever. But you didn't have any, one-on-one name. Some people maybe did. I didn't, and most of the guys in my outfit, my little group didn't either, because you didn't have any reason to have contact with them. So other than that.
Now, did you ever get any chance to see any entertainment? Was there any USO?
Yeah,
Like that?
not much. I'm trying to think of the one. I can't think of their name. It was there. I think I've seen 2 shows. And I can't even think who the second one was. But I know the first one I'm thinking of it. I can't think of their names. They were fairly well-known entertainers. They weren't top-of-shelf entertainers. It wasn't like Hedy Lamarr or whatever. But they were, they were well-known entertainers. But that was only just twice. That wasn't
No Bob Hope.
No Bob Hope. No. Whatever.
When you were out there in Korea, what were your sleeping arrangements? Where were you sleeping at?
During where?
Where were you, when you were out in combat and stuff?
Well, if you were on the line, you were sleeping either out in the open or in a bunker. And if you were back at the company headquarters, if you were in a tent. But it was always in a sleeping bag. And if it was up on the line, it was on the ground. If you were back in the tent, you had a cot. You never had a bed. But other than that, it was always in a sleeping bag. Whatever.
Even in winter?
Do what?
Even in winter?
Even in winter. Oh yeah. I can remember we were going up to relieve a South Korean unit, and we were up in the valley below the mountain where we were going. And I remember it was colder than hell, and it was snowing, and we were sleeping out on the ground in the sleeping bag. Fortunately, you had a waterproof cover you could pull up over the bag, but I tell you what, the sleeping bags we had then were really good. They really came out with some really good ones that it kept you warm pretty much under almost any circumstances. But other than that, you slept wherever you could.
Did you have any problems with your weapon firing or anything like that?
With what?
Your weapon, like, you have an M1?
No. Fortunately, I never had to fire my small arms weapons, because we were on what you call infantry. We were always support to them, but we weren't the ones that would be right on the line moving up with it. We would be a little bit back, keep a high ground so you could see where, if you had to call in an airstrike, you could see where the hell you could to tell them to do it. If you were right on the ground with the infantry, you'd be hard pressed to be able to tell them exactly where the hell you want them to hit.
There was one guy that we interviewed last year who had, what was it, Ray? It was like a recon, like a drone almost. Did you ever see anything like that?
No. Nope.
That's right, yeah.
That was way before drones.
It was like It was like, what it was like, the new technology.
Yeah.
Who knows? You know, the military has stuff long before it gets developed to the point where it becomes into the civilian life.
Right.
So like these drones they see now, like the one they just shot, the Iranians just shot 2 of them, were down over there, you know. Those drones were probably around for years before we ever knew they had them, damn things. But, when they killed that Iranian general with a drone did it, you think, boy, that's hard to believe. Some guy sitting 10,000 miles away on a computer looking on a screen, and he's the one that did it.
I think it was like a recon.
It was like
they
a,
were using it for in Korea.
yeah, like a remote control.
Yeah, it's a remote control
yeah.
thing.
I can't remember his name for some reason.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you went back to the States, I mean, I guess, I know some of the guys we've talked to in Korea, they were kind of like, no one ever asked where you were. I remember one guy was telling me when he came back, somebody, where you been? You know, like, he had no idea, like.
Oh, I had that happen, yeah. I remember used to go to a bar on the 11th frame in Northside. I don't know if you ever knew where that, it's across from the Morgans Bowling Alley.
No, I know.
You know, and I used to go in there regular before it, and I wouldn't say numerous occasions, but quite a few occasions, somebody would walk up and say, hey, good to see you. I haven't seen you for a long time. Where the hell you been? You say, well, you son of a bitch. Yeah, and that happened more than once. That happened, I wouldn't say several times, but it happened enough. The majority of the population didn't know anything, didn't really care about Korea.
Didn't know anything about it.
Didn't know anything about it, no. And now when they come up and say, hey, good to see you, where the hell you been? Aren't you? You know, oh, okay.
Well, when you were with the fire, were there a lot of veterans for the fire department?
Right, when I came in, veterans would take an exam, they used to get a really big, they would get a 20%, 20 point addition. So it kind of ruled out anybody that hadn't been in the service. And as long as that was in effect, they still get something now, but it's not anything like it. Maybe it's 4 or 5 points now. But I think in my class, well, I had a small class I came in with. It was only, I think, 23 guys. And I think every single one of them was veterans. Because, you know, it's hard to overcome a 20% advantage in a competitive exam. I don't get it. You get 20% on top of whatever you score. But it worked out good because there wasn't no real bummers that came in that way. It was all pretty solid, reliable people.
Were there other Korean War veterans?
Oh yeah.
Did
Oh
you
yeah.
guys ever?
Well, there was a lot of World War II veterans still in, and that's at the time. I can remember that our first company was on Engine 3 up at 9th and Broadway, right up the road here, and there were, I guess, almost all of the guys that were still there. The older guys were all veterans, and some of them were even in their 70s. They weren't veterans. They came in when they were in their 50s because there wasn't any young people around to bring into the fire department. So they had to stay until they were 70 years old to get their 25 in for retirement. So that wasn't uncommon. That was fairly common.
Well, with the Korean War guys, did you ever have any conversations about when you were in service, or you guys didn't really ever talk about that?
Not much. Not much. There really weren't too many Korean veterans in the fire department. I don't know why.
How did you, I don't even know if you mentioned it, maybe I didn't catch it, but how did you end up deciding to go into the fire department? Was there a story to that?
Basically, it was because my wife, before we were married, her brother-in-law, married to his sister, was in the fire department. And another good friend of mine we always bumped around with went into Korea at the same time he went in. It was in the Marine Corps. I don't know how it was he cut out, but he signed up for the fire department and he made it. And my wife, she kept telling me, why don't you go down and take the exam for the fire department? Well, one afternoon, I was sitting there at her house, and Bob shows up, and he said, here's an application for the fire department. Fill it out. I said, you're too late, Bob. I just down there this afternoon and filled the damn thing out. Did you know Bob Cummings? Okay. So, and my wife, before we were married and even after, she kept saying, why don't you, because she knew her brother-in-law, and he knew it was a good job. So I just said, well, I'll get her off my back. I'll take the exam. But once I took the exam, then I really started thinking, boy, I hope the hell I make it. I hope the hell I make it. But it was about 9 months before I finally got a notice saying that you passed the exam and report whatever the time was. And so I was like, ooh, that's great. Because I wasn't real happy with the job I had. I got put on with a guy that he was older than me, quite a bit older, and he could be a real pain in the ass. And there was times I'd be working with. I was there one time we were up in, I don't know, it was up in Dayton or Massillon. I was working with him one day, and one Friday afternoon, I always did drove. One Friday, we'd go to lunch, everything would be fine in the morning, come back from lunch, it'd be nastier than the son of a bitch. And this one day I just finally said, when you're done, I'll be up in the cafeteria wherever we were working. It might have been a firehouse. I'll be up in the cafeteria. When you're ready to go home, come up and get me. And that's what I did. And I thought, boy, I got to get the hell out of here. I said, it made my day when I had told I was out of there. I said, although I did continue to work for him for about 8 years. It was part-time. So it worked out real well.
Were you in the Marine Reserves, or were you just out there?
I was what they call, I don't know, it's reserve, but it's not active reserve.
Inactive reserve.
Inactive reserve, yeah.
2 or 4
No, hell, I was in longer than, I think about 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, just a couple of months ago, I looked at it, I said, oh, there's my discharge from the inactive reserve. I had to frame that. But yeah, that was, I think it was about 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, I got one last question. So you mentioned you got married at St. George's, and I guess
Right.
there was a fire at some point. Were you involved in putting that fire out?
No. As a matter of fact, I think that fire occurred after I was retired. Yeah. I retired in 88, and I know that fire was somewhere in the 90s,
Yeah.
or maybe even in the early 20s, was it?
They've got it repaired now, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Well, it's a
Well,
pleasure.
Well, wait a minute. Jack.
Whatever.
Wait a minute. We get to close this.
I hope I
formally.
gave you something worthwhile. I don't know.
I want to tell you something. I appreciate you letting us have this interview,
Oh, yeah.
and I
Well,
want to thank you for your service to our country.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate the fact that you appreciate it.
Good.
My service, whatever.